it teaches us to look for employment. And that's where I see a lot of us, we can probably say that we saw a gap and we felt perhaps I'm that person that can fill that gap. And that's not what we're taught in school.
Okay, and I want to bring in Paul first before I go over to the lady there. She talked about, she's alluded to entrepreneurship, and we've had so many nice stories. You've started your own business, but is everybody cut out for entrepreneurship?
Not everybody is cut out for entrepreneurship. But I believe also, even if you're not cut out, if you find yourself in a place where there is no opportunity for you, there is also a space to learn and create an opportunity for yourself. Because you see, like now, as much as not everyone is cut out for entrepreneurship, jobs are very scarce. So that means even if you're not cut out, you can learn. You can learn the skill. And we have seen so many people, because they've grown up in families where entrepreneurship is a key thing, they become entrepreneurs. So sometimes the environment is created and you can actually learn and grow your skills in entrepreneurship, even if you are not really cut out at the beginning.
Okay, I want to bring in Magdalene. And then how do I know then, because it's partly to what you said, because I've gone to campus, these guys some of them are in campus, and they have studied whatever they're studying, but some of them may end up becoming entrepreneurs, some may become employees. How then do I get to know what is it that I'm cut out for?
I think one of the ways that you get to know is by trying. Because you have heard everybody has said that the opportunities in the employment space are now narrowing. And that means you may find yourself on the other side of things where you're starting a business. And the only way you'd be able to tell if you're an entrepreneur is if you actually try your best and get into that space and learn. And also sometimes you can be in employment and then you find yourself either out of employment because there are a lot of companies that are also downsizing. Then there again, you find yourself in that space. So one of the things that I would advise anybody who is coming to the career space is to cut your own cloth and make sure that you're constantly learning and evolving, because even in the current careers that we have, they have been evolving every day. The marketer of yesterday is not the marketer of today. We're now grappling with understanding what digital marketing is. And even there in that space, we're hearing lots of other international companies changing a chief marketing officer role is being replaced and with other things. So now marketing has become the job of everybody in the organization. So that means that each person has to really keep on metamorphosizing and also evolving and making sure that they're learning more and more. So I think once you get into a career, you have to understand that you will every day learn something new so that you can get ahead of the curve.
Okay, and she talks about metamorphosizing, and we've seen even the workspace changing in terms of where guys are going. And the two gentlemen who've not spoken are in what you can call unconventional careers. Especially, like I said, in high school we were brought for accountants, doctors, the more formal and conventional careers. Kelvin, I'll begin with you, then I'll come to Tom. What has been your experience as a person who has decided to make your bread and butter from the creative space? Because we've seen many young people who want to get into that space.
It's been an interesting journey. There was not so much information when I started out. The schools are only teaching fine arts, so I had to learn a lot on YouTube, on the internet, and I was lucky because it was there are not so many animators at that point in time, so there are many opportunities to actually do it. Yeah.
Okay, Tom, the same for you. What is it that you studied in campus?
I studied education. I was supposed to be a teacher.
Okay, you can teach us now a few things, eh?
So I think we need to start by looking at the role of education in the job market. Really, education, to me, the sole role is supposed to make you trainable. It is not supposed to pluck you from high school or from the university into an office or something. It's supposed to expand your notion of the industry or the marketplace, so that whenever or wherever you go in, you can easily fit. So you see, the guys who are seated here, having not doing what they studied in school is not a failure. It is that they actually went and understood the role of education. It's supposed to make you trainable. And also, we have to look at the people we call career masters in high school. To me, those are the people we need to train more than anything. I'll give you my personal example. So there's this teacher who sees me doing so well in languages and says, hey, you know what, boss? You can be the Secretary General of the UN. And it got into me. I knew I will be Kofi Annan at some point. That was my dream. So the university guys come and we fill in those forms for what course you want to go do. And I say, I want to do secretarial studies. Why? Because I want to be Kofi Annan. So that's what so I go to the university on the first day of matriculation, and then we're in KU. And we look at these guys, and the lady gives a 1 hour, what you expect in this course. And then she looks at me, you at the back, what are you here for? I say, I'm part of your class. And she says, in the 29 years of study, I've taught this course, you're the first man in my class, so please get out, go look for a course. And like, what is this? Because my focus from my career master is I want to be Secretary General of the UN. So what do? I have to take secretarial studies so that I become the Secretary General. I was like, but that was my formation in high school. So education, if you understand it from a broader perspective, is supposed to make you trainable for anything that comes. I mean, as you say, the conventional stuff like lawyers and doctors, those ones you have to go specific. I can't have trained as a teacher, then I go into law or medicine or something like that. But most courses are supposed to just expand your notion of the market.
Okay, yes, Choge wants to add on to that.
You know, what I like about this conversation right now is the fact that when I look at these young people, something I didn't try myself is I didn't experiment to be able to try new things, because time was still, I still had time when I was, their age, young, yeah? And you have time to make mistakes, try out new things, and by the time you come out of the other side, you actually do what you love. There's nothing as good as doing what you love. As long as you're doing what you love, you just flourish. The rest just fall in place.
Okay, I want to bring Paul into this. He's talking about doing what you love. How do I turn my passion into something that can actually make money for me without compromising it in terms of its quality and its authenticity?
I think first, what you need to do is to know nothing is easy. As much as you're passionate about it, for you to turn it into a career or make money from it, first you really need to work hard at it. You need to sharpen yourself in that area. So like he has said, you have to go on YouTube and learn more, about what you wanted to do. So you have to constantly grow yourself. Grow yourself in that line, and also grow yourself in character, as a wholesome person. Things like discipline, diligence, focus. Because however passionate you are, if you don't have those other life skills, you will never make good business out of it. We have seen people like sportsmen who are very good at what they do, but due to lack of discipline, and they actually end up turning it into business, but they get to a place where they become comfortable and they don't go beyond a certain place because they are not disciplined, they are not focused, and they get into a comfort zone. So you constantly have to challenge yourself, sharpen yourself, and really have focus to turn it into business or into a profitable career.
Okay, I want to bring in Magdalene, and we've seen there's a significant influence, even right from what we've had on this panel, of parents or guardians on people's dreams, at least at the more formative stages. Then eventually when you discover yourself, you're like, I'm actually not meant to be a soldier. Let me go and do something else, be an accountant. What's the balance for a parent there are parents who choose to live their dreams through their children, and there are those who will choose to say, go and do your thing. What balance is there? So even for the young people, as they engage their parents, they need to know the balance of, I have to respect what they say, but at what point can I put my foot down and say, this is what I want to do?
That's an interesting question. For me, from experience, my parents were both working, and my father was in general management, and I also had quite a number of uncles who are lawyers. So from that perspective, I thought that I'd either be a doctor or a lawyer. You're shaped by your environment. And I remember when I was going to university, the only compromise we had with my father is he was going to choose a school, I was going to choose a course. And that's how I got into journalism, because I was being a bit rebellious. I needed to be as far from what he wanted me to do. And it's because they allowed me to experiment with that. And that's the reason why I am where I am. And parents also shape you, because they're our very early mentors. And they're the people we go to for advice. And they also shape us because we watch them quite a bit. And I think the role of a parent, again, is also to just nurture their child, to see that this is what the child is very passionate about. And if they can make a career out of that, is to give them the support that they require in terms of making sure that they get the right education, or they're surrounded with the right people who will make sure that their dreams come true. And that is now where the role of making a parent also makes sure that the child is surrounded by people who are like-minded, that they will be able to get advice from them. So if as a parent you do not identify with whichever career that your child wants to take, say it's music, you can look for people who you think would be a good mentor for your child. Because I think that's a role that most children are struggling with. You are taking a career path that is far off from what your parents want, and your support system is not really giving you the environment to nurture that. So it's to make sure that you either identify people who will be able to nurture that in your child, or also as a child to look for people who your parents look up to, who can now, nurture that and build that for you.
Okay, and I think you bring up a good point of getting mentors, because I've seen parents who will say that I don't know how I can engage my child in what they're passionate about, but I'll agree, I'll accept and acknowledge that that's not what I can do. Let me look for someone who can do that. Kelvin, do you find that in the creative space there's enough proper mentorship?
Yes, there are. There are advertising agencies. There are many creative guys inside there. You can always reach out, and they're always willing to help. And also on Facebook, there are many pages. Like, for example, there's the Art Directors and Copywriters Association of Kenya. There you can, if you do a project or a creative project, you can always post it, and then guys comment on it, critique on it, and you can grow from there.
Okay, and you can see the technology is really helping guys grow. He's really technology. He's like the Yego of of graphic design, and that's a really good thing. Narim, I want to bring you in on this. When we talk about mentorship, and one of the challenges we've had in our country is that we actually had a very disturbing report that talked about how majority of the youth would do whatever it takes to get rich, even if it means going through corrupt means and the likes. What needs to be done so that these young guys don't get into the workspace and get into that culture that is already in some places, unfortunately in many places, of corruption, where I get into a certain office and I know I have to live the life of kickbacks and underhand dealings?
Dan, you brought up the research that I detest, simply because that statistic says that it's almost 50% that would use corrupt means for self-elevation. But we forget the other 50 that says that they wouldn't. And that's the one that I focus on. And a lot of times, even with me starting my own organization, there are moments where you're challenged, where because our environment is so corrupt, there are expectations of you to be corrupt. And I'm not saying that it's easy. It's extremely challenging. But what it means is that your processes will be slower. Because a lot of times we pay because we want to get papers faster. We want to get them easily. So if you refuse to pay, people will create barriers for you to make it more difficult for you. So I want to encourage those young people who work hard and work hard with integrity, because we exist. And there are a number of them. There are several young people doing things with absolutely nothing but passion in their communities. You don't have to be highlighted by the media. Even in communities, in wards, I've seen youth using their savings to feed homeless people. So those are the people that we're talking about bringing change in their communities. And I think if we focus on those young people, we can change this country, and we can change how people view corruption. We cannot get rid of corruption, but we can definitely reduce it. And I think it's possible. But as long as we keep focusing on the negative, it's not going to happen.
All right. Tom, I saw on your Twitter handle once you had a thread about cartels, you know, and just briefly for these guys to understand, if you find yourself in that space, because for you, again, just like Nerima, you said, it's something you've interacted with, how do you, get over that in light of this is the pressure for my bread and butter? How do you get over this, a certain clique of people who want things to go a certain way to benefit them at times at your own expense?
Thanks for bringing that up. But just to add something slight on Nerima's story. Good people exist. Good people exist. For example, KCC, we're here. It's still standing because there are good cops who do their job. So good people exist in our spheres. Back to my thread about the cartels in the translation and interpretation industry. Really, their existence does not mean other people still do not do their job. So you will get a few. You'll get a few jobs day in, day out, but then the majority of the jobs are hoarded by the cartels. So what you do in such a situation, for example, my case, is the few jobs that you get, the few gigs that you get, you do them right. Because really in the industry is about relations, how to keep relations. And one of the ways to keep relations is not really by kickbacks. One of the best ways to keep you will be recommended by that client to another person. So if you do it well, you get into your own cartel. That's now your cartel. That's now your cocoon. Because the recommendation that you get, recommendation to me works way better than putting yourself on a billboard somewhere. Because recommendation is the biggest billboard you'll ever get in life.
All right, that's very good. Recommendation, guys, and that goes to character. Joseph, tell us, what are employers looking for?
Employers are looking for an all-rounded person. Today, and I like, for example, an example of the late Bob Collymore, God rest his soul. This is a guy who didn't even have a degree to start with. But you can actually commit yourself and exemplify leadership in whatever you do. So I get somebody from the job market who is willing to learn. They come in, get their hands dirty, do the work, and are able to interact with the rest of the employees within the organization. So those softer skills, not necessarily the technical skills that you come with from campus or whatever, but how you interact within the organization, and integrity. Integrity is key. I want when somebody goes home, you can be able to sleep because you did something well. You did like you're doing it for God. That's what I would always tell somebody coming into the job market.
Okay, Magdalene, how do I package myself depending on the job I'm looking for? Because with you being keen on brand, what does someone need? Is it all about, for instance, if I'm going for an interview, is it all about wearing a suit? Or, what do I need to package myself as holistically?
I think wearing a suit is always a plus. But I think you'd be really out of place wearing a suit if you're going for a sports interview on the track.
Maybe a track suit.
Yeah, maybe a track suit, exactly. So I think it's understanding your context and where you're going. So you must do a lot of research on the organization you're going to, because part of brand building is really understanding who your audience is. So you must understand what are they looking for, how will I be able to have an impact in this organization, because that is the panel you'll meet in front of you. But really what the people who are behind the panel are looking for is somebody with a great attitude, because attitude is everything. And attitude is tied to diligence, because when you think about a sportsman, they know that they have to train every day, regardless of whether they won the marathon the day before. You have to really make sure that you're putting 100% into all of your interviews, into all of your research, and into every different job that you get into. Because attitude is what everyone is looking for when they are now looking at you as a potential candidate. So when you're packaging yourself, everything in your track history has to show that you have the right attitude to do the job. So that means that if you have, your social media platforms, they are, exuding the kind of person you are, because trust me, people are looking at your profiles nowadays. And also, what does your CV have? How have you been able to grow yourself in whatever roles that you've been given? So your CV is actually a track record of what your attitude is and what you're able to bring to the table. So when you're packaging yourself, you're showing us that I'm the right person for the job because I'm passionate about the top 3 things that would make this career or this job the right fit for me.
Right. Paul, I can see you agreeing here very enthusiastically. Maybe we could just add on to that.
Yeah, because I had even put that in my notes about attitude, because I think even how we train in our schools need to change. And I even like what Tom said about school prepares you actually to start learning. It's actually a foundation. So I think as we train in schools, we need to train on the right things. That foundation of having the right attitude, having the right mindset, because whether you have a first-class degree or you have your doctorate, if you don't have the right mindset towards life, if you don't have the right attitude, if you don't have the right life skills, you can't make it in life. So I think even how we start training has to be from that, laying the foundation, and the foundation has to be how is your mindset, how is your attitude towards life. However bright you are, if you don't have the right attitude, you can't fit in any workplace or any team. So that's so important. And I also feel I see myself as a TVET champion, because I never went to university. You've heard I did food and beverage, only up to a certificate level. I tried business. I tried matatu business. It didn't work. I tried farming. It failed. I went into media. I excelled in doing music videos and grew and started a company. So I feel how I started shaped my attitude, like I want to try. If it doesn't work, I'll know that thing didn't work. I didn't fail. Whatever I was doing is what failed. So that having that attitude, I want to do the best I can. And most of the panelists have talked about that. And that's what we need to train other young people. That because at times you're trying something, today you're doing this, tomorrow you're doing this. You haven't even tried enough. Because sometimes you are not going to discover what you're supposed to do that fast. So I totally agree. Attitude is so important. Very, very important in life. And also having the right mindset towards life. Because life is not easy. If your mindset is, you try, it fails, and if you don't have the right mindset, you can't make it in any industry.
Choge, you want to answer that?
Yeah, and I like the discussion around attitude. You see, at the moment, the thought about agriculture as a way of life, as a career, people tend to look at it as a dirty job, manual supposed to be done by our fathers and grandfathers. But one of the things is people have to eat every single day. I work in the agricultural industry. Peptang, we do a lot of tomatoes, bring in tomatoes from farmers. But now I just compare, for example, because of the lack of skill and focus on agriculture in our country, I look at the kind of yield we are getting from the farmers. Somebody gets like 30 tons an acre here in Kenya. In Israel, because of technology and the focus in agriculture, in the same acre, somebody gets 100 tons, 3 times what we're supposed to be getting. Why? Because our attitude has always been, I have to get this white-collar job, have to be this accountant, the lawyer, or something. So that needs to change rapidly, yeah. And we can be able to focus more on our own agriculture and feed the country. And it can actually grow ourselves, and you can become rich just doing what you call the dirty job.
All right, like this, they've been saying farming is cool. That is the agenda that's been pushed to bring more young people.
Yes.
Because I think the average age of a farmer is over 60 years in Kenya.
Yeah, that's the problem.
So I want to bring in Kelvin again, and as we go back to the cool things, as we see in terms of technology and how it's been used. When people are learning, like you learned your career, a lot of it, you attribute it to technology. Now we find a number of cases where you find someone like you may be good with the art, but not always the best with presentation and pitching and business models. How then do you incorporate these, if for example it was not the case for you, but what should someone do? There's someone out there who probably is a creative, and that is what their strength is. I'm good at doing design or at singing, but I am weak at business. How then do you strike that balance?
The best way is collaboration. Since you're good at creativity, there's someone else who's good at business or someone else who's good at representation. So you can partner up with them and then you become business partners. If that doesn't work and you still have that urge to learn, there's always room for going for a business class or an entrepreneurship class. Yeah.
Okay. And do you feel there's enough education-wise capacity building, in the country for guys who are in the arts? We've seen a few more institutions coming up with some courses, but do you think there's enough, especially in your field?
No, I wish there was more. Some schools like ADMI are trying, and there's a university course for animation in Multimedia University, but I feel there should be more schools teaching animation and creativity. Yeah.
So we're seeing there's a great demand but not enough supply of the equipping of these people, the people who are actually in the creative space, for example. Nerima, so policy-wise, what needs to change?
Wow. It's very difficult, first of all, for even, if we're talking about entrepreneurship, to even start a business. When you're talking about licensing fees, starting an NGO, I had to chip in with friends, about 10 of us, to be able to have enough resources. As a young person, you can't even get capital. Nobody trusts you. So policy-wise, there needs to be an environment that encourages young people to venture into other businesses. For him to even mention that there are not enough spaces to teach on creativity is one. So that even means in our school systems, what are we encouraging young people to do? We're not looking at innovation. And even when we talk about agriculture, we're not really encouraging agriculture in our institutions. So I think even when we look at the Big Four agenda, and when we talk about housing and government is saying that there'll be employment for young people to put up the houses, that's such a short-term mentality. We're not thinking about using the different materials. We're not talking about youth who are interested in the environment. We're not talking about how can we look at food security and young people being part of that agenda when we talk about food. So a lot needs to change, and it takes government, first of all, understanding our young people. Because right now, the average age right now is 19, and it's going to be younger for the next 50 years. So what does that mean for our government? And what does that mean when we talk about understanding our population? So if we're talking about a house, right now 19-year-olds are talking about a room. So yes.
Speaking of policy, I'll still go back to the agricultural industry. And today, as we go to the marketplace, there's a lot of imports that are coming into the country. And these are giving our local farmers a run for their money because of cost of production is quite high within the country. So in essence, the products that come out from outside the country, from the commercial region, tend to be much, cheaper compared to the local. I like, some people might call it crazy, whatever is happening in Tanzania, in terms of a lot of hurdles for people to actually export into that country. But one thing is, the headache that is giving those people, they have to think and probably put up factories within Tanzania. I'm one of the victims now, thinking actually probably going to produce in Tanzania rather than trying to take the product there. What does that do to that economy? It creates jobs for the guys within that country. It increases industrialization and actually makes the farmer have market for their produce within that country. The government of Kenya needs to think also from that perspective. How do I protect the local farmer? How do I create market for our own? Instead of importing maize, I don't know from where, how do I empower the maize farmer in Kitale, for example?
Thank you, Tom. I want to bring in, because you're again one of those, like we said, in an unconventional space. do you feel there's a lot of promise for people who would like to get into that? And do you think that people have sold, that the careers such as yours have been sold as things that can actually earn you money? Because the truth is, some guys will go into the conventional careers because of money. You're sure if you're a doctor, you'll get good money. You're sure if you're a lawyer, you'll get good money. Especially in this day and age when we're almost always in court, you know. So do you feel that these other careers are being sold well enough to promise people that, yes, there's money, but it's still some that can be fulfilling?
I'm not sure doctors have money. I'm seeing them on the street striking every day.
Be careful. The next time you go to one, they might sabotage you.
Anyway, if you look at sports, there's a lot of drift in sports today. It's coming from what we've conventionally known as a leisure industry. People go there on the weekend to relax. There's a big drift from the leisure into a business venture. Sports is now becoming a billion-dollar business venture. And then that's the promise, because now we need people to have creative minds, innovative enough to try to position sports as a mega billboard for an advertiser. Because there's also change from merely sponsorships. For example, Coca-Cola or any big company being on the chest of a football team, for example, it's no longer just sponsorship, it's advertising. Now, we need to convince these companies that this is the right sport entity to advertise on. But then, that's the hope that is there for the young guys in high schools, in the universities, because the sports entities themselves, including the sportsmen and women, they are talented in their feet. They're not talented, with all due respect, in here, of how to convince, how to position themselves as a strategic billboard. So that is the hope of a university student, to go there and now try to convince this company that partnering with this sport entity is a mega billboard. I'll give you a perfect example. A club like AFC Leopards, last season alone, commanded a PR value of 800 million shillings. That's a PR value of AFC Leopards of 2018-2019 season. Now, if an organization, there's so many organizations that are in sports in other countries, but in Kenya they're not in sports. Why? Because our sports entities have not positioned themselves as billboards, advertising billboards for these companies. Now, it is us as marketers to go and try to convince these clubs, first positioning them as billboards, and also convince the advertiser that this is a right advertising spot. So there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of opportunity. We're only looking for the right mindset, the right innovative and creative individuals that are going to fill those positions.
Right. Magdalene, we're in an age where we're seeing the group we call millennials, some of whom are seated here, I believe, who they are in the space of what we call the instant shower generation, or the microwave generation, where you want results almost as soon as I can. So today I start working as a salesperson at a certain company, and I expect by tomorrow I should become the assistant managing director or otherwise. So how should they balance the ambition to do a lot with the reality that there's a growth process?
I think the one thing that I appreciate about the millennials is their passion and hunger for results, because that also gives them great opportunities to try out different things. Now, the other thing that they need to do is just balance, because like we've said, life is tough. We all imagine that the minute you got into the workplace, in 5 years, you will be the managing director, and we're still striving for that, some of us, yeah? Because you realize that there's a process. There's different steps to it. You have to learn, you have to gain experience, because nothing trumps experience in anything. Even in your entrepreneurship journey, you cannot start today and start making your next million in the next 2 months. it takes a process. So one of the things that we've also realized, because we have a lot of millennials living with us, is creating an environment that exposes them to the right kind of process. That means you introduce them to mentors quite early on. You get people like the ones that are on the panel to speak to them, because there is nothing that can replace a good word of advice. The other thing is that you have to take it and also implement it. So it's making sure that you understand that there is a process in everything, that you are nurturing that process, and that you're also learning, because every day you must learn to be able to make that million in the next 2 or 3 years.
Joseph, I want to bring you in because you're a CEO and you're not old. You know, and that is something that now inspires many of the young people to feel that I can also become a high-level executive at a young age. So you'd be quite the person to tell us, what's the balance? Because some of us might end up becoming CEOs at 55. And by that time, you'd be a chairman, probably.
Amen to that. In fact, I want to say that I think millennials are the most misunderstood people in the workplace. I take my example at Peptan. I lead a workforce of over 500 people. And a good number of them that are coming into the workplace now are these young people who just fresh from campus, very young, and like you said, microwave, they want it yesterday. But the most important thing, like she said, is just mentoring. Talk to them, handhold them, tell them it's a journey that you have, to learn, expose yourself to a lot of learnings within the organization, take one step at a time, and always have a mentor that drives them. And these are just kids who are hungry for purpose. Just show them what they need to do, guide them, and show them it's possible. I was a director by the time I was 35, but that's because somebody handheld me. Yeah, and so that's just it. Don't beat them. In fact, the older generation would always put them down and say, "These kids just want it yesterday," and all of a sudden they just tick off and say, "This is not the organization for me," and they want to bounce and leave the organization. No, make it cool, make the environment friendly for them, let them know they can grow, create a clear path for their career, and the rest will just fall in place. For you young guys, at 30, you can actually lead a great organization. It's just a question of just having the right attitude, focusing on what you want to do, and soaking in a lot of learning from the people with experience. You don't just wake up today and you're the CEO of the organization.
All right, and he's mentioned some of the people who guided him and helped him. Must we always have, is it possible to make it without someone to help you? And his is more of a mentorship case from what I understand. There are others who have the case of the godfather. So there are people who feel that without a godfather, I can't make it.
I think it's very difficult to make it without someone guiding you. Whether today it's virtual, like him, he had mentors, you're watching videos and all that. Every time you need somebody to guide you. I think at the beginning is your parents, your guardians and all that. That's why it's important for them to guide you the right way. So I don't believe there is a self-made person. There is somebody who will always make you. It could be directly, it could be virtually, it could be from a distance. Maybe you watch them on TV and you learn from them. But the way we are made is you need somebody to guide you at every time. He talked about being a director at 35. But I look at our institute, our principal became a principal at the age of 23. You would think every person at 23...
the principal of Talanta Institute at 23.
Became a principal at the age of 23. When we had placed the advert was a reading general manager, and he applied. He was competing with people who had a doctorate. He only had 2 degrees at the age of 23. So even as we talk about the millennials, there are those who are really focused, and you can trace that back to mentorship. If you look at him and how he was brought up and how he was mentored, it's different from all the other young people. So that means at whatever age, these guys can be very serious. And that's why I've said mentorship is very key. It's a must. Whether, whatever form it is, it's really a must. That's what I can tell you. I'm who I am because I followed my mentor who taught me from photography. He was learning a business, so I learned from him how to manage a business. I've never done any business management course. But I learned how he was doing it. So it was very easy for me because I was not a books person. So I needed somebody who can teach me practically. This is how you run a business. This is how you run accounts. So that's why I would say mentorship is really key. It's a must.
I like how he said at 23 there were only 2 degrees. Like that's not a mean feat. Maybe just to ask you, when you talk about mentorship, and you said, like you said, you looked, you learned a lot from the internet. Did you have anyone, a physical person who you'd interact with on this, or is it that by the time you were learning, there were not as many people in that space?
No, I did go to Shangtao Media College for college studies. I had a very good teacher there who now went over and beyond to train me on animation. So I looked up to him, and he also guided me and gave me resources, and also gave me that psych to actually look for more online.
Right. And just before I go to Tom, do you feel like the people in the creative space, such as yourself, are still undervalued?
A lot. And it's always a fight with our clients and the people interact with. As in, when you are asked to charge for a project, you always have to actually defend it, most of the time. Yeah.
Okay, Tom.
Yes, that's really funny. They're really undervalued. In the translation industry, you meet a client and the client tells you, hey, you're not going to charge me that much for stuff I can Google Translate. And I'm like, if Google Translate really worked, I think translation will not be a course in the university. So just try it. After some point, they come back. So the creative industry, they're really, really underrated. But the point I want to make is about this hand-holding thing, about mentorship. What we have here, network. It's the most important thing. It doesn't have to be, if the vice chancellor of the university agrees to be a mentor, well and good. But they don't have to be that big. Your friend in your class, your schoolmate, that can be network for you. Please keep those friendships. Keep those friendships. You know, there's this thing of, we used to be with him in Campo and we've lost contact. Really, you need those contacts. Make friends and keep those friendships. It's very, very important. You never know when you will need someone else. So don't say that I no longer talk to that guy, I no longer talk to that person. No. Those people, they may not be very important to you, but just keep those friendships. They may be important to you. Those are the networks, the little networks that you will need at some point. Keep them.
Nerima, do you feel like rather in your journey, how did you manage to get that kind of mentorship going? You said in terms of resources, you came together with some friends. What about the capacity resource in terms of your ability to actually do this? How did you go about it? For the sake of someone who may be looking to start in their own thing and they would like, to get to know.
Okay, so I'm a very proud millennial. The thing that I did with our friends, we came up with a list of 100 people that we thought were young, but also very futuristic. They were young, but they had achieved so much by the time they were of that age, especially in governance. So by the time we sat down, we narrowed it down to a list of 10. And out of those 10 individuals, we approached each one of them. And only about 7 agreed to be advisors. So those 7 currently sit on my board right now. So my board members have been my mentors, really, especially in this space. Because when we started the organization, I was 25. So nobody believed that a 25-year-old could start an organization that focuses on governance. And now that we're national, it took my advisors telling me which path to take, how to handle things like that, because I couldn't navigate that space. But I think the most interesting part that I've learned is when you're young and starting an entity, you do need credibility. And credibility is only built with experience. So because you don't have that experience, you can capitalize on other people's experience. So they introduced me to other networks. It introduced me to people buying in to the company. And it's because of that that when we got that credibility, we were able to grow. But the only advice I would give is the conversation that we had with parents. My parents didn't understand what I was doing at the time. And a lot of times, it's not that they don't love you, they just want the best for you. And they think that they know better. But sometimes you actually know better. But it's disrespectful for you to go against your parents. So what I did was ignore them. And I ignored them for a very long time until they saw, enyewe, this chick yani, I may decide. So they just left me alone. So when they start to see that you're serious about something, consistent discipline about something, and they begin to see the fruit of it, your parents will be your biggest fans. And once you've won your parents' support, who cares about anybody else?
Magdalene, and these are a lot of stories from people who are in entrepreneurship, but we've not heard so much about the guys in employment. Like, how then do you navigate the growth space as an employed person? Because some of the guys here will end up in employment, like you and I, you know.
In employment, you still also get exposure to a lot of mentors. And I think it's a mix of both mentorship and coaching. Because when you're in the career space, you are either reporting to somebody who is now your boss, who does more of the directing and coaching. So again, now this is where attitude comes in, because if you're the type of person who doesn't like to be told what to do, and you are now fresh in the company, you and your boss could get onto a collision course. But understanding that that is also part of the shaping process for you, because they're also showing you the ropes within the organization, because nobody comes into a workplace knowing exactly what they need to do, because every organization has its culture, its norms, the way things are done. So you kind of need to have that person who also coaches you through things. Because as you're moving up from one rank to the other, you're acquiring new skill sets. And what got you the job is not what's going to get you to Choge's level. Because now at that point, they're looking at leadership. And so you keep on evolving, and the way you make sure you do that is surrounding yourself with the right networks, and also coaches and mentors. So I've had a mix of both. I've had coaches, I've had mentors, and also reading quite a lot, because as you're evolving in the workplace, you understand that what you did in university is really just giving you the technical know-how. But then now when you're dealing with people, relationships, understanding stakeholder management, that now is a whole different ballgame, because your emotional intelligence gets into play. So you also have to read quite a lot and just keep on learning. I think that's the one thing that I've invested a lot. Continuous learning. Every opportunity I've had to take up a course, and it's really hard going back to school and you're older. Because, wow, you realize I could be doing something better, but you push yourself, because that's the only way you're going to climb up the ladder, by making sure that you're surrounding yourself with the right people, because those networks are priceless. Those networks are the ones that are going to get you your next job or move you to the next thing. And also, those networks are the ones that expose you to different people. So, for instance, if you choose to go into the entrepreneurship way, you tap into those networks to just guide you through that minefield, because being employed sometimes can be a minefield. Yeah.
Choge.
Yeah. Just to add just one point on top of what she says, there's an important person called a sponsor, and not the sponsor, the the Kenyan one. There's this person who sits in the kitchen cabinet who can be able to vouch for you at any point in time. When they go for those meetings to determine who's going to be the next crop of leaders, will your name be mentioned? Will somebody sponsor you? Yeah. how do you earn the respect of that sponsor? Is by how you handle yourself within the organization, the the mastery of what you do, and respect and a seat on that table. So for you to get that vote from this particular sponsor, you must have, as well have carried yourself very well. So my advice is, at any point in time in your career, always have this one person who can be able to speak for you. That if they were to choose this particular leader, somebody will stand up and say, Choge is the right guy for this job.
All right, and I think an interesting thing I want to bring in is the fact that the millennials we're talking about are almost always online. And the challenge is productivity. Because we've seen cases, especially when Facebook started becoming big in Kenya, some companies started blocking them. You can't access Facebook from the company website, the company machines, the network rather. And so at that time, not as many people were on their phones. So, data was a bit more expensive. How then do we strike that balance, Paul, of guys, of ensuring that these guys, this is their life, this is who they are. The upcoming workforce are people who are living most of the time online, but they still need to be productive so that you don't end up having to do a project that would take 1 week is going to take 4 weeks.
Yeah. I think balance is very key, because again, you can have people on Facebook the whole day and work is not done. But blocking may not be a solution because they also have phones and they have internet on their phones. So there is need for training and detraining, and also coming up with a program where people feel they are not being so restricted, or they are not being forced to be, put into, be made who they are not. So it's just to give them freedom, but again, there can be control that you can only access from this time to this time, you can do this. And also knowing you might actually need them for your marketing activities. So if you block them and you tell them, I can't use this, well, now you need them to push your brand, they'll wonder, okay, you always tell us we shouldn't be on Facebook, and now you want us to post things about the company on the same platforms. So you need to really know how to deal with them. And the key is give them access, train them, and show them from this time to this time we do this. From this time it's open to do your stuff. So that when you need them tomorrow, to push your brand, they will join in. So you need to win them to your side. So you need a way you can have a program on how do they engage, train them. You appreciate who they are. You appreciate the time we are in. They need to feel you understand them. Because one of the problems with millennials, like she said, if you feel your boss doesn't understand you, you disconnect. And how are you going to work with a team that is disconnected from you? So you must interact with them. And even as the older generation, learn from them. Because that's the other thing we don't do. Because, initially we used to have mentors where you're the one being mentored. But right now, we're actually having older people being mentored by younger people because there are things they know that you really don't know. There are times I need things, and I'm not that old, but there are things I need done on phone very fast, the setup and all that. It's only the younger people can do that in a minute. I struggle a bit. So there is also mentorship, the reverse mentorship. Younger people mentoring the older people. This is our generation. This is how things go. This is how you deal with us. We have to agree to be educated also by young people. Because every time, if you keep on suppressing them, pushing them down, they break out. They will find information on YouTube, go and start their enterprise and move away and leave you on your own. And now you're trying to figure out, wow, marketing has moved to online. How do I figure out that? That you actually really need them, and you also need to listen, really listen to them, learn from them, and also acknowledge that they are very bright and they also know what they are doing.
Kelvin, you work online a lot. Yeah. And even as you are learning a lot online. How did you strike that balance of discipline? Because if, for example, I'm on my machine and then I keep seeing pop-ups of notifications on my Facebook, maybe you've got WhatsApp web, you've seen the pop-up is there, your Twitters, by then maybe Instagram was not that big, but right now you're working and you're seeing pop-ups and you're like, oh, so-and-so tagged me in this post. You stop your work, you start following that thread of how people have talked about you. How then do you balance that?
The trick is just to focus on what you're doing. If you're passionate about the project you're working on, you'll find yourself even missing lunch because you are really, really into what you're doing. And then a trick I usually do is I give myself between 2 to 3 hours of disrupted work. So after 3 hours, I give myself like an hour or 30 minutes. I go back to social media, I check WhatsApp, and then I go back now to working. So it's always a matter of disciplining yourself.
Discipline is one thing that's very key, that's coming across the board. And I just want to ask Choge, even as we start drawing to a close, I'll ask each of you to prepare your closing statements. It's like it's the presidential debate. Just start preparing your closing statements. But we've seen the reality when people are going to the workplace. There's the children who've come from privileged backgrounds seem to have an advantage when it comes to their ability to even communicate. They're more eloquent more often than not than those who may not have come from well-off backgrounds and even went to, the more high-end schools. So there's sort of, disparity there. How then should the person who's not come from the very well-off try and make sure that they can still take on the one from the, the higher-end institution when it comes to, say, an interview? Because an interview, I'll come and I speak very well because I went to good schools, I have good papers, but there's the other one who may feel disadvantaged.
It's a sad reality that it's actually, the people who tend to articulate themselves very well, who've are polished, more exposed, tend to be the ones that actually get the better pie of the better piece of the cake. For me, it's simple. When I look, I come from a very humble background. So when I look at somebody, a good interviewer will be able to tell that behind this face of a stammering young man who seems not to have the full confidence that he needs to have is actually a brilliant young mind who can actually be mentored and nurtured to bring out that great leader that you want within your organization. That way you tend to have an equitable distribution of opportunities, even for the, in quotes, less fortunate amongst ourselves. But yes, you are right. The society tends to favor those who are more polished, who come out as commanding and understand what they are doing. The timid nature of the child who's been brought up in the rural or not quite exposed, for me, can actually be changed. It's actually all about the leadership within the organization. How can you just turn around the brilliance of this young mind and be able to bring out the softer aspects from him? And once you change that person, you actually empower an entire village. That's the beauty of nurturing such people from the not really exposed, unlike the well-off families within the cities.
All right, and one thing that you may not know is that both Magdalene and Joseph have been top 40 under 40 awardees of the Business Daily Top 40 under 40. So we're not joking here. Eh? So I'd just like them to just briefly tell us, Magdalene, how did you do it? How has your journey been the point where you got to be acknowledged for your milestones at a young age, under 40, and you had already been acknowledged at such a prime platform?
Hard work. I think one of the things that I've been very fortunate about is I've surrounded myself with a lot of mentors, coaches, and people who've really sponsored my journey as I rose up the ranks. And the other thing is attitude and diligence, because when he was talking about limiting the amount of time you spend on social media and the amount of time you spend putting into a project is something I really identify with. And the one thing that you have to understand is you are the captain of your life. I mean, you make choices, and every choice has a consequence. So with the amount of diligence and impact that you put into your workplace, you reap where you sow. So I think one of the things that really helped me is just making sure that I was very focused about being passionate about what I do. And I'm a very passionate person, and I get very happy when I get into the workplace because I form relationships and networks, and those are the things that propel you one workplace into the other. And the other thing is being part of a culture that enriches different people. Because as Choge was talking about making sure that every person feels known and seen, whether they come from a privileged background or not, that's really the impact of your workplace culture. And at the time when I was being nominated for Top 40, I was part of a culture that was very vibrant, and each and every person was, understood and seen. So as we, put together our workplaces, as we are leaders, as we are setting up our companies, we also have to really create that culture of excellence, and that makes every single person known and seen, so that we can all lead with impact.
Choge.
The journey to the top 40 under 40, in fact, that was a very good icing on the cake for me, but I don't stop there. We still go rise up to the chairmanship that you mentioned, right? Believe it or not, I was one young man barefoot in a place called Lokichar, where we've just discovered oil. Probably I was stepping on oil and I didn't know. And the discipline and hard work, and always keeping my eye on the ball to ensure that I make one thing. I've always wanted to make my parents proud, just before myself. And at any opportunity to shine, I normally say, do something like you're doing it for God, which means giving it your all. So by the time I was moving between, ranks, moving from Unilever to Airtel, the jumps were within 2 years, because I've done it. What next? And I would go and ask my friend, I need to add more value. And then by the time I was moving to Airtel, I told my interviewer, who was the global CFO of Airtel, I told him, I'm coming to your company under one condition. If I'm not reporting directly to a director, I'm not coming. That is the only reason he hired me. Because he thought this guy knew what he wanted and he was driven. And 2 years into Airtel, I was already given a CFO role in a country called Gabon. Coming back home to the CEO role at Peptan was an a smooth sail. And right now, the only thing I want now is excellence. I won't stop at nothing at excellence. Today, I say launch my Orchid Valley juice, and I want it to run and take over the market. Yeah. So I won't sleep until I have gained the market share that I want. And so, what drives you is what I would ask someone. And always put God first in whatever you do. The rest will just fall in place.
Very good. So I'm going to take your closing remarks, begin with Paul as you go this way. What your closing remarks are in regard, especially speaking to the young people who are looking to get into the workplace, are looking to get into the relevant university or any tertiary institution courses.
Yeah.
What do they need to look out for?
First, their strengths and their abilities. But what has also come out from this panel is you need a proper foundation. And you've heard about diligence, focus, discipline. Without those things, whatever career you're in, you may not make it. And the other thing I can add, because I'll tell you, whatever institution you go to, nobody out there really owes you a job. So you need to really grow yourself. And talking about entrepreneurship, I'm going to give entrepreneurship a different description, that everybody is an entrepreneur. First, you're selling yourself. You are the first enterprise you sell. So whether you're going to an employer, you're going to sell yourself. So you have to package yourself properly as an enterprise. So apart from the career you're pursuing, look for other skills you gather along the way that will make you more than just your peers. Package yourself in a way. It's very easy to sell yourself and to go and dictate who you want to report to. Not everybody can do that. You'll only do that if you know your capacity and what you have built yourself into. So, and then he talked about excellence. Excellence is very important. If you do an excellent job, if you're an excellent person, whether as an employee or whether as a business person, you'll always make it in life. You'll excel in life. That's my parting shot.
Thank you very much. Kelvin.
The best advice I've ever been given is, in an organization or a place of work, be the first person to enter the office and the last person to leave. That way you'll get discipline out of yourself. And then always keep learning. There's the career that you started out with might not be the same 2 years from now. There's always something new. There's always a new technology to do. So you always keep learning. And as you have mentioned, look for mentors, look for people who can guide you towards greater heights. That's it.
And just before we go to Nerima, you've talked about, there's a challenge of be the first to the office and last to work. Do you also need to have a balance for burnout?
This is not the best advice, but when you're starting out, that experience comes out of heavy work, as in you actually really have to work to get there. And then as you slowly climb the ladder, you now slowly reduce the amount of work you put in, because you're young. You have so much energy inside you. But the older you get, the more you realize you can't pull 14 hours. You do 8 hours, 6 hours. Yeah.
And also when you start getting children.
Yeah.
Nerima?
Yeah, I would say put God first. And also, there are going to be a lot of people who say no. This is for the people who probably have an idea. And we waste a lot of time trying to convince others of our ideas. And they're just people who will not support. And that's okay. And it takes a sort of sense of passion that only comes from within. There can be nobody else who tells you anything different. If you have that, where it gives you sleepless nights and it's constantly nagging at the back of your mind, that's probably your calling, and pay attention to it. But the last thing that I would like people to understand, especially young people, is that you are the captain. Nobody has control of your life but you. So as soon as we realize that and understand that, then time will mean completely differently to you. And that's the advice that I would give.
Thank you. Tom Bwana.
Thanks, Dan. We cannot overemphasize the need for networks. Once you have created those networks, one thing you should do, tafadhali usiangushe sponsor. That guy has spoken so highly of you to some people, to some organization, that this is the right guy to do, to be employed or to do for you, well, like what I do, translation. So this person has spoken so highly of you, then you're given a job and you do your own chora kind of job. Please hold that job so dearly. Remember, when you are in a workplace, there are so many people out there better qualified, can do a better job than you. And so just realize you're privileged to be in that position. So do it to the best of your ability. For one, so that it can get you to the next level. Two, so that the guy who spoke so highly of you doesn't look like he did not know what he was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
What I would say and leave to this young generation is that you are your own limit. In the journey of life, you will fail. You will be rejected. You will doubt yourself. But the question is, how do you rise from all of this? Never give up. Never give up. As soon as you rise from all this, we meet at Pepton.
The other thing I would say is that cream rises to the top. So as you get your rejection and all of the things that life happens, just know if you're made of the right stuff, you will rise to the top. And as long as you are putting 100,000%, you will rise to the top. The other thing I would say is focus on your environment, because your environment is what will either make you or break you. Who you hang around with, your networks, who you look up to, and what you do even on your spare time. Because making sure that at a young age you are interacting with the right people, that you are making sure that you're building yourself, because these are your building blocks. That is what's going to get you to the top as quickly as you want in this microwave generation. So your environment plays such an important role, and which is why for anyone who is in university right now, I would tell you focus on the networks and the people who you surround yourself with, because that is what is going to shape the person you're going to be into the future.
Thank you very much. Some very great conversations this morning on My Network Career Fair at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. And we've been having some great input from Magdalene Bulandi, who's the Director of Brand, Marketing and Communication at Kwetu Student Residences, as well as Joseph Choge, who's the CEO of Premier Foods Industries, or Peptang, the young man with no shoes from Lokisha. But look at him now, top 40 and 40. Now we also have Tom Bwana, who hope to become the Secretary General of the UN. We hope that Kofi Annan can one day say, I should have been like Tom Bwana. You know, and so that he's a multilingual sports marketer. We have Nerima Wako Ojiwa, Executive Director of Siasa Place, a proud millennial, as she's to her own confession. And we have Kelvin Shan, who's the founder and creative director of Sanare Limited. We hope your clients don't frustrate you more and pay you the money you want. And we also have Paul Mukoma, who's the founder and CEO of Talanta Institute, where you're mentoring many young children, many young guys in this country, who has a principal who only had 2 degrees at 23, just 2 degrees at 23. Thank you very much. And before we close the live broadcast, I'd like to invite Francis Munoki to come and speak to us and just re-emphasize the fact that the Nation Media Group is very keen on ensuring that you can connect your passion, your purpose with your career. He's the Managing Director of the Nation Newspapers Division. Francis.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, everyone. I would like to start by first appreciating the panel. Did you like what you heard? Excellent. So I would like to welcome everyone to our 5th My Network Career Fair. My Network is about coaching, mentorship, and guiding careers for our young people. So for those youths who are here and those who are at home, please make sure that every Friday you pick your copy of the Daily Nation. You will not need to use your bundles after that. All you need to do is to remove the insert of My Network, and you can actually read it from everywhere. It is very, very informative, and I'll make sure that if all these advisors who are here today don't write in My Network, we'll have to start writing in My Network. I'd like to also share the theme of today's career fair. Today's career fair is about technology, education, and the future. In this era of technology, there are many vast opportunities, and I'm delighted to see all our partners here who are exhibiting today. You can see the number of stands here from institutions of higher learning and tertiary education colleges. Please make sure that you engage with each one of them, because just like us, they are focused in ensuring that they provide guidance, they provide mentorship, they provide training, and expose you to the challenges of the future marketplace. Now, in this era, if you look at career is not just about going to someone and getting employed. And I was encouraged to hear of panelists here who began their companies or their organizations at 25 or before. This speaks to what this country needs. Our country.
We are the Lord's. We are therefore a creation of God to manifest His greatness and love. And that greatness and love was found in Joyce and my brother Edwin. We found a true meaning of brotherhood, love, and unity. They broke all the boundaries and obstacles to live in accordance with God's word. They saw themselves as Kenyans dwelling together in love and unity. Joyce has been a mother to this community, to the people of Sotik, Bomet, and to the nation at large. She had indeed been the power and the cog in helping to understand the values of life according to the scriptures.